have a culture of pursuing truth and pursuing the ability to do things and pursuing the technical challenge. And that simply opens the doors to say, well, it's not about me, it's about solving the problem. And so if solving the problem, we can do it faster with AI, with machine learning, with these tools, that kind of opens up the conversation and makes people more eager to adopt these technologies.
Somebody that understands development and can guide AI to do what it needs to do can, hugely accelerate the process of development. Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have a guest that's making some exciting revolutions in the world of polymer development, kind of pairing AI with some really complex scientific research to really create some polymer compositions that are really changing the industry. David has a PhD from UT Dallas, and he has a great team built around his new company. So welcome to Manufacturing Insiders, David.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I want to hear more about the applications of some of these polymers that you're developing and some of the problems that you're solving in the plastic space.
So the main applications for which we actually got the company started around come from the need in the display industry. As you might be aware of, the display industry is going through an evolution, a slow but still an evolution of form factors, going from your typical flat device that you see on your phone or your tablet, going to more non-flat dynamic form factors, we call it, where you can adapt the form of the display. But the problem is that we have been accustomed to using old materials technology for the past 30, 40 years that these display technology have existed, and there has been little to no evolution on what materials we're using. We're still using PET or polyimides or TAC materials that have existed for decades. And we created this company to change that, to bring new materials technology that allow for new form factors, more durability on those displays, and be adaptable to the new requirements, mechanical and electronic and optical, that the new form factors require. So,
Okay. So are we talking about like a touch screen where you can actually interact with the technology? But then you also have the issue of like you drop your phone on the slightest uneven surface and it shatters the screen. Like we could create a polymer that's going to address that sort of an issue.
yes, precisely. So we're talking about displays on your laptop, your tablet, your phone, and particularly in phones, is not just about getting rid of glass because it breaks, as we all know, we all have experienced, but also about giving you the ability to expand your field of view. Let's say you're on a plane and you're wanting to watch a movie, and going from a 6-inch diagonal to a 12-inch diagonal screen will give you a much better experience enjoying your content. So that kind of ability of folding out your display or rolling out the screen, those kind of abilities is what we are looking to create with these materials, and other applications in semiconductors and consumer goods and things like that. It's just
Yeah.
displays is one of our main focus right now.
That's awesome. So yeah, I've actually already been talking about you a little bit because I had an interview with a guy who is also in the material development space, but he developed a 3D printable solder that would allow you to make very highly conductive circuits with any 3D printer, which is pretty revolutionary. There are some compounds out there and kind of polymer compositions that have some conductive properties, but very little compared to like a copper wire, for example. So I was talking to him about this and some of the challenges of embedding these electronics, because if you're melting something at a little bit higher temperature than the plastic, when you set it in there, it's going to have some issues. So it would be really complementary to have a custom developed polymer that would be 3D printed as kind of the bed layer underneath this solder material. So I just thought that was interesting how like all these conversations kind of flow together.
Yeah, materials are the bedrock for all of the revolutionary technology that we have seen over the last century, right? When you think about it, is the evolution of materials what allow for semiconductors, for telecommunications, for all of the even AI, as we're seeing it now with ChatGPT and large language models, there is a fundamental breakthrough in materials which enables all of those things. The problem is materials take a long time to be developed. They really is just it's a very difficult scientific quest, and it just may take decades to evolve from one material to another. And that's a big part of the challenge that we are solving by integrating, as you mentioned, AI workflows into the materials development process. It's not, I think one of the big conclusions that we came to is that it's no longer just viable to have a breakthrough in chemistry, because sometimes these breakthroughs have a lot more optionality to it than what the human mind is able to handle. I think I always like to say humans are pretty bad at making decisions. Like if you have two choices, you can quickly make your mind. You have three, maybe you make the right decision. Give you five options, you're more than likely not going to rank the options the right way, and things going to go south very quickly.
Yep.
And in science, you do have that optionality. You have many ways that you can tackle a problem. And we think of scientists sometimes as these mighty entities that know it all and they will make the best decisions. The reality is we're all humans and we all have biases and we all have preconceptions. And what we decided to do is to use machine learning to guide that scientific instinct
Yep.
into making the best decisions and narrowing down the space in which they can still make mistakes, but at least narrow it down to a more data-driven, ML-driven kind of approach to accelerate the decision making and make it a more efficient decision making, and therefore faster development.
Right. So it's kind of a weird pairing to have, like, your programmers, your AI engineers on the one side, and then your scientists on the other side. And I can't say like I'm extremely knowledgeable about those personas, but I would imagine there are some major differences. How do you marry those two teams together and kind of create like a good work environment and create a productive productive collaboration so you can actually produce the chemistries you're looking to accomplish?
Yeah, it has certainly been a challenge. I think you pointed that correctly. Is chemists, particularly, they have their own ways of doing things, and when you tell them that you're going to use this algorithm, they look at you in a certain way saying, sure, bro, sure.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
saying that now this algorithm knows everything that I have been studying for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And the reality, it takes some time. It takes some first adopter mindset
Right.
to be able to do this. And not everyone is able or willing to do it. So it's a lot about company culture and how do we select the people that comes into our team. Being a startup company, a small group, we're around 25 people in total. We have the privilege to still be to forge the culture in a way that the people that is here is willing, able, and desiring to really take advantage of these technologies.
Right.
And then on the other side, you cannot just have the typical data scientist. You have to look for people that actually have scientific background and have picked up the data science aspect of things, so they understand the physical world and the data science to bring the two together. And we have, over the past few years, we have managed to do that very successfully, to merging the two cultures and kind of getting both cultures to work together in a good fashion.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a challenge every industry is seeing, even my own. You know, because you've got developers, and programmers that are kind of worried that AI is going to take their jobs. On the other hand, I try to convince them that somebody that understands development and can guide AI to do what it needs to do can hugely accelerate the process of development, and you can use it for specific coding projects, maybe not the whole project but for components of it. And so yeah, I think like facilitating or developing that open-minded culture is something that we're all kind of struggling with right now. So I guess I'd be interested to hear like if you have any pointers or insights, because even a lot of the other manufacturers that might be listening should be integrating AI into their own workflows. And once again, a lot of them just don't really know where to start or how to pair a specific expert in a department with somebody that understands AI to really figure out what the problems are and then develop solutions. So like if you have some insights about how to kind of build that, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, again, I guess the bad news is there is no blueprint for this just yet.
Right.
And things are evolving so quickly that it really takes the wheel of the person who is at the forefront of things, the management, to have conviction over the destiny that we're all facing of AI being a part of our lives going forward. This is a
Right.
force of nature. Nobody's going to stop it. And I think, at least from my view, this starts at the very top. And if there is no conviction that this is the route that the company should go, that the AI should be integrated at every corner of your decision making, I think it's very hard for other people throughout the organization to adopt it. But I think the key pointers for us have been, hey, we have instilled a culture of scientific quest. We are an R&D, and a research and development organization, an engineering organization, but at core we're scientists, and keeping that mindset of always ask the tough question and understand that you need to separate the persona from the idea and be able to criticize the idea. That has created this ability to really be more have a culture of pursuing truth and pursuing the ability to do things and pursuing the technical challenge. And that simply opens the doors to say, well, it's not about me, it's about solving the problem. And so if solving the problem, we can do it faster with AI, with machine learning, with these tools, that kind of opens up the conversation and makes people more eager to adopt these technologies. But as I said, it really takes the strongest will to
Yeah.
convince the team, to
Right.
bring the team to the table and talk about the challenges, and 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 then instigate that culture throughout the company. And you need to live and die for it.
Right. No, I mean I've experienced something very, very similar because I've had a pretty strong conviction, like you said, as the leadership in my company, that AI is the way of the future, and we need to figure out how we're going to integrate it into all of our processes. Like you said, kind of an AI first mindset. And so I've identified specific instances, and I tell my development team, hey, I really think we need to look at AI as a solution here. And they
Mhm.
humor me. That's the sense that I'm getting. They humor me and they're like, oh, that didn't work. And I'm like, well, only you know the right question to ask next. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm getting shut down here because I'm not a
Right,
developer, but like,
right.
you know how you could be using this, but you just don't want to.
Yeah, no, there is going to be a huge resistance, and I think it's, as you said, it's about asking the right question. And I go back to my point about having the right mentality from the beginning, the right mindset from the beginning in the company, of always asking the tough question, always asking the next thing. Because if you want to focus on large language models, ChatGPT or Gronk or all the others, even if you have the best model, you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get to the point where you
Right.
want, right? If you don't provide the right set of instructions, the right prompt in this case, you're still not going to get to the answer that you're looking for.
Right.
And in our case, for instance, which is a much more convoluted set of information. We're looking at chemical reactions and chemical components and how they interact with each other and how they become a material. We have a lot of the efforts that we have put into this is more about figuring out what is the important information that we need to feed into the model so that the model can learn from the chemical reactions rather than the model itself. Like sometimes you don't need a very elegant AI solution with tons of GPU and all of that. You just need to be able to think about the right pieces of information that you need to feed the computer so that you can get the right answer, and asking the right question, right? Asking the right question, looking at the right metrics. So it's as I said, it's a bit of the cultural issue, but it's also about the targeting the right problems. But you will always find the resistance from people to really adopt this, and it all starts from setting the example and going after those very well-defined goals in that sense.
Right. No, I think that's really good advice. Kind of clearly define the problem, taking an AI first mindset when it comes to problem solving, having that kind of live and die for it, pushing it through your culture. I think those are all really good tips. Um, so, what are the specific problems that you are trying to solve right now? And I'm kind of interested to hear like how far along you are in developing any given material.
Right. So from the AI perspective, what we are solving for is in the world of materials and chemistry, the data is very expensive. Right? You need to produce the data in order to be able to train models, and for each of the use cases that you can imagine, you will need to collect very specific data sets. Imagine you're looking at abrasion resistance. You need a polymer that is very abrasion resistant, and it's relevant under certain specific conditions at certain temperatures, certain levels of humidity, and there's no data set that you can go out and buy. There is no data set that you can go out and scrape from the web. You need to go out and collect it, and creating that diversity of data so that you can more quickly design a new material for, say, AI or semiconductor packaging. Uh, those are the kinds of things that we're doing. Just expanding the data set and being able to identify the right conditions and patterns to do all of that. So it requires a lot of still handwork, being in the lab and setting up the experiments and setting all of that. But we know it's an investment into the future as we are building those data sets. Now the number of experiments that we need to do in the future will continue to narrow down further and further as we continue to expand our data. In the materials front, one of the main problems that we are solving today is, I don't know, perhaps you and your audience have seen foldable phones such as the Galaxy Fold and other devices that already have this kind of flexibility on their screens. But one of the main problems with those screens is that they have a crease in the middle of the screen, some kind of a curvature that doesn't look good. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons why Apple has not launched yet a device with such a foldable display is because of that crease line in the middle. So essentially, it's just plastic that is getting deformed. Like it's not withstanding the stresses, and it just gets deformed, gets permanently deformed, and you cannot get rid of that.
Right.
So we have developed a set of materials that won't suffer that deformation, and yet has the flexibility and the optical properties that are desirable. So it just essentially replacing all materials technology that the industry have used because they have no other option, and using AI-driven design materials that actually have the mechanical properties, the optical properties, and everything that is required to solve the problem. So that's one of the main challenges that we're very excited about our later results, because we have built some prototypes already, and we are now in the qualification process with some of
Wow.
the main display manufacturers across Asia.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's super exciting. That could be the jump start for, and honestly, like the technology that you're developing on the AI side to problem solve, chemistry issues almost has infinite applications. I mean, even beyond polymers. I mean, you could really talk about pharmaceuticals. You could talk about genetic engineering. There's a whole lot of stuff you could address, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think we borrow a lot of inspiration from the pharmaceutical industry. I think the pharma industry has kind of been a pioneer into implementation of AI for physical sciences. Uh, but as I was alluding to earlier, each problem of the industry, if you want to talk about metallurgical applications or aerospace, each one is going to require some adaptation of the technology to be able to use machine learning and AI for this. Uh, as a matter of fact, the reason why we started building our own platform is because we went out and looked for solutions implementing what is called materials informatics. So essentially, it's just the implementation of AI and data analytics for materials development, and we just didn't find anything that will actually be of value to us from the perspective of having the application specific insight.
Right.
And I think that's the expensive part, is the application specific insight. So we have we decided to just build our own from scratch, and this was in 2020 when we decided to do this. Um, and that now what we have realized is that while this platform is not going to be applicable for every field in material science, it is actually looking pretty strong for all polymer science. So how you formulate polymers in general, not just for displays, but in general for broad range of application, is able to generalize the learnings from one set of experiments to a completely different set of components without having seen those components before.
Right.
So that's the reason why we were able to do that is because we had the discipline to make our models based on fundamental physics rather than just brute force our way into having a lot of data and train with that data set. So you can learn patterns without seeing the reason behind those patterns, or you can go and layer behind that and look at the fundamental physics that drive the patterns and then learn from those and be able to generalize into a broader range of applications. So I believe that is really what is driving the value in our company. That's why we have been able to be creating a lot of data into the space and then switch over to these kind of abrasion resistance polymers, optical polymers for all completely different set of applications, because our models were able to recognize those new set of polymer materials and still be able to predict properties and make accurate projections, even though it hadn't seen those set of materials.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So kind of creating a more flexible program. So I see three potential or kind of business development scenarios for you. On the one hand, you guys are developing a specific material, then selling that material. The second is you're developing this model that allows people to do their own research and develop their own polymers that you could potentially sell. And then, what was the third one I was thinking of? So the third one is then kind of providing that consulting. People come to you and say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. And then you're going to use your model and develop that polymer. So like, which lane do you kind of see yourself in?
So I guess I'm certainly biased. I'm a material scientist at heart. So the design of materials and selling of those materials to solve a specific application, that's where we have gravitated more towards throughout the life of the company. It's certainly true that more recently the pool of the customers has got us a little more towards you come on with you come to us with your problem, we help you solve the problem that you're facing, but we also want to create the material that solves the problem, right? And I believe there is a fundamental difference on that, fundamental value that we bring to that, because there are other materials informatics companies around the world, but they stay short of the um, implementation side of things. So they will give you an insight, they will take your data, they will analyze it, they will create some sort of model, and then send it back to you and leave you back with your own problem of how to solve the physical world problem, how to solve the real world problem.
Right.
And in our case, we have always been passionate about no. It's about the model, but it's the model as a tool to solve a real problem. And we that's why the importance of merging the two worlds together, of having the physical side of the development in-house and the AI also in-house. So that is, it's about, at the end of the day, if you can have a beautiful model, beautiful features and metrics, and you have mean absolute error of 5% or whatever, it doesn't matter if at the end of the day you're not able to walk into the lab and formulate the material that you need and pass the real world tests. So I think that's why we probably want to stay in between those two lines, where we have application specific targets in terms of maybe foldable phones and semiconductor packaging. Those are key areas of interest for us, and also take on some other interesting problems from across the industry and solve those, and but not just solve it from the AI perspective, but also providing a material solution that
Right.
will actually tackle the problem and not just providing consulting. I think consulting is the one line that we probably won't
Yep.
explore in the foreseeable future.
Yep.
So we want to we want to be the next uh, world-class company that actually provide real material solutions and not just simulations or consulting.
Which I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying, because in the two scenarios that you are willing to kind of dip your toes in, you kind of have the ability to retain some level of ownership over that material, which means if it becomes the next plexiglass, it's like, okay, that's that's a big company.
Right.
Um,
And we can I think just to differentiate in the two cases, I think there are cases in which we will own the entire commercialization pipeline from the manufacturing to the delivery of the end customer. And there are some others where we just design the solution, design the process, and then we license the technology out to somebody who is much better at executing that specific business area.
right.
I think those are two very plausible scenarios. I just probably reiterating a little bit. The one scenario where we don't see ourselves is just providing consulting services, if you will.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's fascinating, man. So I'm gonna switch lanes a little bit here. You were born and raised in Mexico, is that right?
I was, yes. Grew up in the area of town, area of the country is Piedras Negras, right on the border of Eagle Pass, Texas, and Piedras Negras in south of Texas.
Gotcha. I like to talk about some of the geopolitical situations, tariffs, etc. And I just feel like, you're an analytical you're a smart guy, and I can tell you think about things. Like, I'm just kind of curious to see like what your take is on the relationship between Mexico and the U.S. and what opportunities exist there. I've been reading some interesting books about sort of these geopolitical relationships, and I guess I didn't realize the degree of uh, ties between U.S. and Mexico economically,
Yeah.
manufacturing wise. So yeah, just broad thoughts. What do you think?
You know, I have realized when I talk to people who haven't been down at the border and they go for the first time, is always eye-opening to see the level of integration of the two countries. I think if you believe everything you see in the news, you probably wouldn't ever imagine that kind of um, communication and interconnectivity between the two nations. I actually, before coming to the PhD, starting my PhD, I actually worked in the automotive industry in Mexico, and you can see how naturally integrated all the two economies are, from manufacturing components that go into cars that are actually travel all the way to Canada, and then the next step is manufactured there and comes back to the US, and then goes back to Mexico, and then the final assembly happens somewhere in Michigan. So I think the car goes 30 times in and out of the country before it's being finally assembled. And that's just, man, and I think the automotive example is just one of many.
Right.
TVs, computers, etc. And Mexico has just become a extremely strategic partner to the US. That's why when I hear the talks about the tariffs and all of those things, I think that while I do see a value, a fundamental value in bringing some degree of manufacturing back to the US, and I fully support that, I do believe that we should think more of a United North America, Mexico, US, and Canada as an strategy rather than the US itself, uh, because the competitor is China, the competitor
Right.
is India, the
Right.
competitor is other places, but US, Mexico, Canada, we should think about it as a united region that provides unique strengths from manufacturing to just the population decline issue that Asia
Yep.
is going
Yep.
through. If I think immigration in the U.S. is one of the biggest strengths. Is having immigration, not having a population decline in the U.S. is a fantastic thing that we have going on for ourselves. Um, so I think, as I said, I think we should think about the strength of the region rather than just the U.S. itself. I grew up in Mexico. I'm a United States citizen, but and so I think about it as a region, and I do see the benefits of having a fully integrated economy.
Right.
And I actually today I have my team in Guadalajara, all my AI, all my machine learning his team is in Guadalajara, in Mexico. Uh, so I think it's just super important that we recognize the value of that. The cultural affinity between the U.S. and Mexico and Canada is a lot of people perhaps don't see it, but there is a tremendous cultural affinity. Like there is a lot of things that we don't have to worry about when you go to the Mexico or Mexicans come to the US or Canada that you probably wouldn't feel as comfortable going to India or going to Bangladesh or going to other countries just because cultures are there is more mismatches on that
Right.
end. So yeah, I do think that we should really focus on the strength of the North American region and that Mexico is a critical part of it. Mexico is going through a very interesting time. The current president has been able to navigate very well the tensions with President Trump, and I think that has been highlighted across the world. I think I was talking to a diplomat from Canada the other day, and they were looking and studying how the Mexican president actually managed that situation because she came out very strongly out of that conflict. So, and you can hear Trump speaking all good things about President Sheinbaum. So,
Yep.
I don't know. I think Mexico and the U.S. are going through a very interesting time of the relationship. Growing up in the border, I always had in my mind very clear how important that relationship was. I grew up coming across the border every weekend to do shopping, and people coming to
Yep.
Mexico side to do shopping as well.
Yep.
So, I think we should probably spend some time rethinking our strategy on the North American alliance.
Yeah, I agree with you, and in light of like some of the things that I've been reading, I didn't realize the degree to which the aging population in U.S. and Canada is going to impact the future. And on the other side of the coin, Mexico's demographics are actually getting a little bit younger. And so Mexico is really positioned in a lot better way moving forward over the next 2 decades because of their younger population, which is a huge asset, for a North American alliance. And I feel like a lot of the issues, at least on face value that Trump is bringing up, or is on the drug side of things, which is, there's not a lot you can do about it. Certainly, I think Mexico could probably do a better job of keeping them out of the U.S., keeping the drugs out, but they are going to find a way here one way or another. It's just going to affect the cost of those drugs. As long as the demand is there, the supply is going to be there, right?
Yeah.
So, how much of an issue do you think that the drug situation is? I know it has a massive GDP effect on Mexico. I mean, I think it accounts for 10 to 15% of Mexican GDP, which is huge. If
Right.
you compare that to the U.S., our auto industry accounts for 3 or 4% of our GDP. So that's a huge chunk. So, like, how much of an issue do you think it is, and like, how do you deal with it?
It is definitely an issue. It's a very significant one. Safety and uh, the state of the law enforcement and all those things. I think those are. I think that's probably the biggest deterrent in the economic growth in Mexico's economy is corruption and the permeation of the cartels throughout the entire country. That's
Right.
the biggest issue. As you said, right? It's very difficult to think about uh, controlling the export of the products as long as there is demand. And then you also have to think about all the other factors that are in the supply chain that come into play. Like somebody's moving that money from one place to another. Somebody's moving that laundry that moving from one place to another. And the most likely that's happening within the U.S. because money flows somehow
Right.
magically flows to
Right.
Mexico. And guns and all the military armament that somehow flows to Mexico. And that's one of the biggest challenges that the Mexican law enforcement groups have is that you're facing an army that is sometimes better equipped than their own Mexico law enforcement teams. So I think it is a very complex problem, and I think it has to be addressed in a united front rather than thinking of it as a Mexico problem. It is
Right.
a U.S. Mexico Canada problem,
Right.
because the demand is not in the Mexico side. The largest portion of the demands on this side. Mexico should have control over their own law enforcement and safety, and Mexico should be doing everything in their power to stop it, for sure. That's unquestionable. But it should be thought of as a family problem, not just an
Right.
individual problem.
Right. Instead of pointing at the kid, your kid did it, my kid did it.
Exactly.
That's kind of what that's the feel you get from it. Yeah, and the other thing I didn't realize too was that the Mexican law enforcement problem is way more complex than it is at face value. It isn't as easy as just saying, well, your law enforcement should be making sure these cartels don't come to power and don't operate freely. But because of the geography of Mexico and the terrain in Mexico, like the US has a lot of assets with, rivers that go north to south, flat plains that we can build roadways across. So everything is very accessible from sort of a centralized government. Whereas in Mexico, it's designed, it's fragmented naturally, which means that in these, remote areas, you have cartels come to power because law enforcement doesn't really have access to them. And so it's almost impossible to solve. Like, I don't even know what you do about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can think of the case of El Salvador, right? Like Bukele comes in and he starts putting all these people in jail, and then he later figure out who should be in jail and who doesn't. Like, and there's tons of violations to human rights or whatever. But he all of a sudden now El Salvador is the safest country in this side of the hemisphere. Uh, but then you look at the country and they have a small population, and they have like it's kind of a more concentrated area that you have to control. In Mexico, you have all these different regions from the one coast to another, from north to south, with all of these different geographic areas where there is really no way to get into the mountains and have law enforcement there. So I think that is certainly a challenge. I don't think it's an unsurmountable one. Uh, if you're able to tackle the problems from other sides, right? Like, as I already talked about, the cash flow, the guns, all of the if you got to think about the problem from the manufacturing perspective, right? All of the supplies, all of the raw materials, all of those things. I think those are the areas where you can certainly trim down and weaken the strength of these organizations. And again, all of the money that is moving around this, I think that's where you need to do. I do believe in legalization as the one way to solve this problem. I know it can be a controversial opinion, but I do believe that legalizing this is probably the only way that you can solve this from the safety and economic perspective, the most viable. There will be some other social aspects that will need to be addressed for sure,
Right.
but you already have the problem. So the social problem, you already have it. It's not going to get worse or better because you legalize it. You already have this social aspect of people consuming these substances. Uh,
Right.
you just need to create a legal framework so that this doesn't create subsequent problems across border in the US and in other places.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that could be part of the solution. I've thought about that. The argument people make is that you're always going to have a black market for stuff as long, because the black market stuff is always going to be cheaper than the stuff that's regulated. I don't know if that's completely true or not. I think there might be some global case studies, but yeah, it's kind of a scary thought. With marijuana, sure, like legalize it. I don't think it's a huge issue. Cocaine, fentanyl, that stuff. Now we're how many more people are going to do it because it's legal or try it? That's the question. But yeah, it's a complex issue. But I think that you guys are positioned correctly in terms of what we need out of U.S. manufacturing, what we should be focusing on, instead of trying to, take automotive work from Mexico, I think we should be looking at the highest value add sort of manufacturing that we can possibly do, and leveraging our technology assets and our our research departments at universities to really create manufacturing solutions that other countries just can't do.
Right, and you think about the strengths of Mexico on that side, and I think Mexico is the country that is producing the highest number of engineers per capita as of the last decade. Like is producing a lot. The schools have grown, and there is a lot more people getting prepared for manufacturing jobs. So, and from the engineering perspective, so I think that is one huge value for the region. And again, I keep thinking about this problem from the region perspective. Uh, and the US, Mexico, and Canada should focus on the higher value add stuff. We should certainly reshore some of the even the lower value manufacturing to other countries, to other places outside of China. I think that is a strategic step that should be taken regardless. But primarily, I think we should be thinking about semiconductors infrastructure in the US, robotics, and ways to make things more efficient. Because just bringing jobs back to the US is a tough challenge if you think who is going to do all of these jobs that already,
Right.
like we're at record lows unemployment, right? So you bring a shoes factory back to the US, who's going to make that?
Right.
Well, probably there's not enough people. But if you have a automated plant that can handle the clothing manufacturing, and it's a streamlined process, and now you can think about people who is more doing maintenance on the robots and the manufacturing lines, sensors, integration, AI. I think
Yep.
that is a different story. It just takes time, but I think that is probably the best approach to tackle this challenge.
Yeah. I think it's the only approach because, like you said, who's going to do the jobs? And it's not even just a cultural problem, like the kids don't want to do the jobs. The problem is
Yeah.
that there's not nearly as many kids as there was, 20 years ago. The baby boomers are almost out of the workforce. That was our largest generation in the US. The next generation down is significantly smaller, and then the following generation is even smaller. So yeah, it's automation, AI, that sort of stuff is going to really make a big difference.
Yeah, no, it's as you said, there is no people to do it. So
Right. Yep. Yep. Well, David, I think it's pretty exciting what you're involved in, and I certainly hope that some of these flexibles, you get some traction with some of the big, phone manufacturers and screen manufacturers, and I think you're going to be super successful. So, congratulations on the business.
thank you, and I think you will be seeing things from us on the shelves in the next 24 months. So
That's
very
fantastic.
excited about all of this.
Very cool. Hey, I like to do just a really quick segment towards the end of the podcast that's kind of focused on, what resources could you use right now, whether it be investors or whether it be, a specific type of machinery that you're trying to get your hands on, or technology that you're trying to get your hands on. Is there anything that you could use right now?
Clean rooms, that's one. So we're about to expand our facility, so looking for high quality clean rooms, particularly now with all the disruption in the supply chain and the changes of costs coming from things coming from China. I think just having clean room access and building a new clean room is one of the things that can be a little bit challenging nowadays. Investors, as we're growing, we're right now we're going through a Series B fundraise that is shaping out well, but certainly that is something that will be like to entertain conversations with investors interested in deep tech, interested in AI for to solve fundamental physical problems. So I think those are the two main things, and of course, talented people who wants to be involved in developing new materials, using particularly material scientists that are curious and interested in how to implement AI in the materials development side of things. I think those are three things that we definitely be interested in
Awesome.
getting
Yeah,
people reaching out.
those are great, good ones. Um, Yeah, the clean rooms. What class clean rooms do you need to use? I mean, probably pretty high class. I'm trying to remember them all because there's the ISO class, and then there's a different classification for multiple levels of clean room.
Yeah, and it's I think clean was the first thing that came to mind just because we're going through that process right now. But it's class 1000 clean rooms
Okay,
for manufacturing of polymers and the UV filter kind of facilities.
gotcha.
Yeah, which up to a few years ago it was all coming from China. So let's see how things evolve now that we're looking into the new reality of things.
Yeah, I've got a couple relationships in the UV space. Two different companies that have UV solutions. I know the one of them uses 222 nanometer UV, which the interesting thing about that wavelength is you can use it constantly, even when people are present in the room, but it still has the same disinfectant effect as a
Oh,
typical
interesting.
UV light. So that one was super interesting. And the other one used a little bit different wavelength, but they have some cool applications. But um, if that's something that you're looking for, I'd be happy to make an introduction there. Or I don't know if it has to be integrated with a clean room solution or if it's a separate component.
It's usually we look at UV mm, curing equipment, essentially UV LED
I
to convert the material.
I see.
And we try to keep external UV out of the lab and all of those things.
Gotcha.
So it's filtered from the UV. And then we look at UV LED lamps to do the curing, the conversion of the liquid to
I see.
solid state. So that's the
Understood.
kind of thing. And primarily, those come primarily from either Germany or Japan nowadays.
Yep.
I don't know if there is a US based uh, provider these days.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Got it. Well, hey, thanks for throwing those out. I'll keep my eye out if I come across anybody that can help you with any of those needs. But thanks for joining today. Great talk.